It's that time again.
Back in 2015, Nickelodeon made a random Christmas special starring a whole bunch of the actors from the shows that you just saw a bit of because they started airing just as you were outgrowing the channel. For some reason, I watched this at the time and proceeded to then think nothing of it in the years after. In late July of this year, I was looking through my family's DVD cupboard to see if there was any stuff in there that I'd like to rip a personal backup of, and as a part of this, I looked through the handful of discs I'd recorded off the TV as a child to little interest. I don't know what I was expecting, I just thought maybe there'd be some nostalgia. A couple of days later, on the 2nd of August, I made my yearly visit to Reddit out of probably mild boredom to be greeted by an r/lost media post about the Ho-Ho Holiday Special. It had finally been found that very day after years of being lost, with it being put onto Paramount+. I mean, it's basically still lost then. I mean, does anyone have Paramount Plus? And I thought it rang a bit of a bell. I figured that maybe I'd seen it back in the day and not really remembered it, or it had been featured in a video about more obscure, lesser-known lost media that I'd seen at some point. Then I headed for the bathroom, and halfway across the landing on my way there, I froze and audibly shouted, "Because I f***ing have it!" Yeah, for some reason, not only did I watch this below-average Christmas special, but I saw it fit to record it as well, which would have been great if I had realised it was lost literally any day for apparently like 5 years prior to this one. Don't get me wrong, I'm always glad when the highest quality version of any lost media is found, but come on! It was that day!
Yeah, basically, I'm seriously considering giving in!
Where we left off last year, I tracked down all of the game files I could find and reached out to a man who I referred to as Travis to ask about it. Not too long after I released last year's video, he got back to me. Funnily enough, I was screen recording a video from my IT teacher about Microsoft Access at the time, so I actually captured the moment the message arrived. Also, yes, I made certain to cancel LinkedIn Premium in time. He said, "Hi Tom, sorry about the delay on this and thanks for getting in touch. It's really been decades since I worked on that project, but I'm delighted that you enjoyed it so much. I'm afraid I simply don't have access to the files that those projects were linked to, unfortunately. I might be able to speak to Craig, who was a Flash developer back in the day, but I'm not sure that he worked on that project." If we entirely overanalyze this message for a second, the fact he said that he doesn't have access to the files implies to me that they would have only been with AKQA themselves. Anyway, over a year later, for some reason, I tracked down Craig and sent him an email, which he replied to shortly after. Wow, that's a blast from the past. I left that agency back in 2010. I didn't actually work on any of those, but I have passed your message along to some folks I'm still in touch with. What's your connection to them? How do you know Travis? We'll let you know, which is great. The only thing that slightly concerns me is the fact that he asked what my connection to them was, which is a completely reasonable question, but also makes me feel like it's possible that he thinks I was involved with their development somehow or something, and that's the only reason he was willing to see if he could find anything out. Especially considering I then told him my position and he never replied to my reply, which is probably just him not having heard anything back from the folk he's still in touch with yet, to be honest. I'm just overanalyzing again. Like the time we managed to get hold of our media teachers' band's otherwise lost demos thanks to a man who used a bit of one of them in a YouTube video who somehow managed to misinterpret that we were part of the band and was reluctant to give them to us when he first realised we weren't. That's a whole other story. Anyway, a bit of time later, I found myself watching Matt Casey's video about the North Korean driving Flash game, in which he breaks out a Flash decompiler. In all the time I've had to think about these games, it somehow never crossed my mind to even look into the possibility that Flash decompilers may exist. Anyway, I immediately dropped the history notes I needed to deal with to pursue this far more important endeavour. From this, I didn't manage to pull a great deal, but I did manage to pull some things. The earn game loading bar seemingly had different text for as the bar progresses, and the Gromit mug's nose became increasingly red, mirroring its real-life ability to change with temperature. Annoyingly, there weren't any more assets that I could find in this file, but there was a lot of code, which I suppose is good, because it means there's less that's missing. And what this code has also done is revealed what all of the different options were during the tea making process. The choices of ways to power the water heating processes were rabbit, maybe like a hamster wheel or something, but a rabbit because of the subject of the film. Fish, I have no idea. Bucket, and gas. The choices of milk were chocolate. Knew it. Bottle. This has now triggered another distant memory, and I think this was a baby's bottle. Udder. Also knew it. And soya. And the choices of tea were decaf, pyramid, beach tips of course, loose, and antes.
What?
There's also things in here about sweetener options, but there's no list that I can easily find like with the others, so I'm not sure what the options for that were. Presumably like sugar.
Oh, for
artificial sweetness.
I don't know, salt maybe. There's also a time metric mentioned, so clearly that contributed to your score somehow.
But we were so close! Or not.
Shit.
I feel like it should also be possible to figure out what the actual combination required to create the perfect cup of tea was from this, somehow as well. The code of a file from Focus Pocus also led me to another man, let's call this one Daniel, who according to LinkedIn was a developer at a company called Reading Room between 2002 and 2004, and then the lead Flash developer at a company called Mook between 2005 and 2007. Now, for some reason these companies are really hard to find online, but that's not really important because we can just assume that they were just other agencies like AKQA. Anyway, I fired a message off to him as well, because why not at this point? One other thing I did achieve from this Flash decompiler thing was uncovering the vast majority of the assets from the PG Tips history timeline slider thing, which I think, minus the adverts which are readily available online elsewhere anyway, is here almost in its entirety, even if it's still not functional.
We could rebuild.
Also, I looked through all the Flash files I got from that old computer, but that proved completely fruitless. Which, thinking about it, does actually make sense, considering I know for a fact that that hard drive has been entirely full since those days from this incident, which means everything has been almost entirely overwritten. I'd also like to say thanks to commenter OL Thomas for sharing a memory of the Tale of Two Continents game. Apparently the final level took place back in England, being a top-down hedge maze which you would guide Monkey through, with the final goal in the centre potentially being one of those circular, kind of ornate cafe-style tables with a cup of tea on it, though the memory of that last bit apparently isn't as clear. As it stands, this is the only publicly available information we have about this game outside of the short synopsis on the website, meaning that we now have at least a small amount of information on all of the games. Yay! On the topic of the Continents game, I noticed while going back through the Wikipedia page edits on the Monkey brackets character page for reasons that you will understand later, that early versions first mentioning the film describe it as consisting of Monkey portraying various historical figures as he attempts to make the perfect cup of tea in the Kenya tea farms and then safely take it across the world to England for Queen Elizabeth I. First of all, surely it would be the second, not the first. And secondly, the source for this information is a Guardian article which uses information from the trailer to say that Monkey portrays these various characters, which explains the historical figures part, but nowhere in this article does it mention the Queen. The only place, as far as I'm aware, where the concept of getting back to England for a cup of tea with the Queen is mentioned is in the synopsis for the game. Looking again, this Queen detail is actually still here on the current version of the page, albeit corrected to no longer be Elizabeth I. I thought that maybe in a bit of a coincidental bit of wording this was actually sticking with the history theme and saying that Monkey was bringing the first cup of tea to England in a roundabout kind of way. Well, the earliest record of tea in England is from 1615, according to Wikipedia again, so take this with
Milk one sugar?
And Elizabeth I died in 1603, so the timeline doesn't quite line up for it to be this, but I suppose it could have been, maybe. When did this turn into a Year 8 history lesson? Anyway, I once again found myself delving into Wikipedia page edit histories in the hope that whoever made that first edit had done so assuming the plot of the game was the same as the plot of the film, and the plot of the game had been released before more information about the film, and therefore that they might remember more things about the game had they played it. The fact that it also mentions making the perfect cup of tea also kind of suggests that there could have been some kind of mix-up with the synopsis for Earn coming in here, but I don't know. I eventually traced this down to a balding and grumpy man who we will call Craig. Despite not being particularly hopeful that he wouldn't just get very annoyed at me even asking, I sent him a message. I'd also like to take a second here to thank Someboy Online and Scribbles to Screen for helping to bring more attention to this situation, and it's just genuinely been great to see other people take interest in this after all these years. In fact, a lot of you watching probably came from those videos, but I've linked them below anyway, if not. But we're not done yet, because while researching this video, I ended up on an entirely new other Monkey Lost Media search. This is another piece of tangentially PG Tips related lost media which I've known about for many years yet forgot about completely until recently. Watch with Monkey was a one-off variety show pilot hosted by, of course, Monkey, which was produced to be shown on BBC One sometime after November 2003. This was while he was between jobs, so to speak, following the fall of ITV Digital, but before being picked up by PG Tips. The show is described as consisting of dancing, singing, and even wrestling with the stars. The only evidence of this show's existence, and the source of all of this information is, as far as I can see, this BBC News article from the time, which says that the show was to be broadcast at a date yet to be scheduled. According to the Wikipedia article for Monkey Bracket's character, the show featured Dawn French and the Ukulele Orchestra of Great Britain and has never been televised. I have absolutely no leads here at all. Although then I thought, whoever made that Wikipedia edit about Dawn French and the Ukulele Orchestra must have had some other source besides that BBC News page, because they're not mentioned on that page. If I can track them down, then maybe they'll know a bit more. So with this in mind, I went back to the earliest revision of the page, in which the BBC article was already linked, but not actually referenced in the body of the page itself, and I began to manually comb through every update until I found it. Here goes! Flip! It wasn't a registered user, it's just attributed to an IP. Okay. Well, if we're going all out here, we might as well go right to the top. Nigel Plaskett.
Who?
He is the puppeteer behind Monkey himself. Let's send him a message. I don't know why I even bothered with this. This is like just going straight to the top and expecting results.
Holy hell, it actually worked!
That very night, he replied, informing me that he did indeed do the pilot, and it did, in fact, feature Dawn French, in a reenactment of Romeo and Juliet, in fact, and also a performance of Something Stupid. No, wait, no, that...
Then I go and spoil it all by saying something stupid like, I like you. I mean, not that.
Most interestingly, however, he said that coincidentally he was just about to put his script on eBay and would let me know when it was up. How am I making more progress on this tangent that I threw in what should have been passing than I am on the actual games? That same Wikipedia article for Monkey Bracket's character also references him making an appearance at the 2002 Brit Awards, which I thought might also be lost. However, further research proved that this never actually materialised due to concerns about the appearance going against advertising guidelines, with Monkey indirectly or otherwise promoting ITV Digital, because it still existed at this point. Apparently Johnny Vegas, who did go on to feature in it alone, was going to be joined by a donkey puppet instead, but I don't think that happened either based on the footage I can find online. That's where everything stands now. I have no idea if any progress will be made from this point. There are people who haven't replied who could potentially reply to messages and have the answers to everything, and if that happens, I guess I'll just have to break the yearly video tradition or wait an entire year. I don't think I'll do that. Or it'll take an entire year. Anything could happen at this point. I am now rambling. If and when I get my hands on that script, I will scan it in and link it in the description. Otherwise, that is everything. Thank you for watching. Cheers. Maybe use the Bear in the Big Blue House goodbye song for the outro for just no reason.
Goodbye, goodbye, good friends, goodbye. 'Cause now it's time to go. But hey, I say, well that's okay. 'Cause we'll see you very soon, I know. Very soon, I know.